Hey Amarillo, I'm Skylar Gallup, and you're listening to Hey Amarillo, the interview podcast featuring some of the most interesting people and stories of Amarillo, Texas. We record every week at Amarillo College's Innovation Outpost. The IO supports education, workforce development, and industry growth by inspiring and facilitating innovation in the Texas Panhandle. Today's guest is Sarena Carpenter. Sarena is an Amarillo native, growing up on the east side with a story that certainly defies odds. That upbringing and what is clearly a strong dose of grit gives Sarena incredible perspective and motivation in her current work as the executive director of Amarillo Angels, a local nonprofit that works to support foster families in our community. The kind of support she and her little brother did not get growing up. Here's Sarena. Sarena Carpenter, welcome to the Hey Amarillo podcast. Thanks so much for being here.
I'm super excited to be here today.
Wonderful. Okay, so we'll get going the same way we get going with each episode that we have. And that's by kind of just asking the broad question, what brought you here?
Well, I am the new executive director for Amarillo Angels. I have stepped into the role in November of 2024, and then I was co-executive director with Gwen, who is our founder, and then in March I took the role solo, and so I'm just so excited to be here and just to be a part of Amarillo Angels in general.
Okay, so I'm super excited to get into more information about Amarillo Angels and your work stepping into that role, and we'll do that here in a little bit. Let's start with, are you from here?
I am.
Nice.
I am born and raised in Amarillo. I've been here a whole 40 years.
What schools did you go to?
I grew up on the east side of town. So I went to Glenwood Elementary, Bowie, and then Caprock. I graduated from there in 2003. Go Longhorns.
Love that. And what was your pathway after high school? Where'd you go?
So that's where it gets very interesting. And that kind of is what directed me towards Amarillo Angels. So I did not have a traditional, what you would think of being traditional right after high school. So I raised my brother from the time I was about 15 and he was 5. We're 10 years apart. And so I had scholarships places and I had to put those on hold because taking care of my brother was much more important at that time. So I actually did not return to school until an adult, and I went to Amarillo College in WT, and I'm actually currently still in WT. But graduating as an adult student was a crazy task all in its own, but I was always pushing everybody else to do it. So I thought, why not me?
Wonderful. I know that Amarillo, community colleges specifically focus on like non-traditional students. What was your experience being a non-traditional student at Amarillo College? So tell me like what you were studying, if you felt at home, if you felt, if there was any time when it was like, I'm not 19 years old.
Sure.
What am I doing here?
Sure. So my original journey, I started back right whenever I graduated high school. And I realized very quickly that I needed to focus on work and things like that to be able to provide. So when I went back as a grown-up, the way it happened was COVID, the whole business, and my son at the time was 10, and he was sitting at the kitchen table, and he was crying because he couldn't figure out his work. And I looked at the math, and I was like, I don't remember any of this. And then
I have an 11-year-old, and
Yes.
I feel that deeply.
Yeah, and I felt so bad. I was like, well, I can teach you, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And he had no idea what that was. And so I told him, how about I do it with you?
Oh.
And he said, what do you mean? I was like, how about I go to school with you and I'll sit here and we'll cry together. And so that very next semester, I went ahead and enrolled. And the place where I worked at the time was very gracious and they provided an educational stipend. And so as long as it was something that was towards my job, then they would cover it. And so I went ahead, and Amarillo College had a new thing, and it was a business management degree. So there were like different levels of certificates, and then you can complete the degree. And I thought, I'm just going to start off small, and I'm going to do a certificate. But I fell in love again with my love of education. So even though I went through all the things that I went through when I was growing up, I didn't even make my first B until I was in 10th grade. So I loved school. And so getting back in as an adult was the best thing because I could do it in my pajamas. I could do it sitting next to my son. I could do it when everyone was asleep after I did mom duties and full-time work duties. I got to do me. And I just haven't stopped. I kept going, and it is the best experience. And I think if I would have done it 10 years sooner, I may not have been as successful or as willing and wanting and gung-ho to stay up until 1 o'clock in the morning getting things done. And now that I am where I am, it's been mind-blowing how awesome Amarillo College was. And then moving on to WT, just the being able to be non-traditional and still having all the accessibility and feeling like I'm not too far out of the know was the best thing.
Man, what a success story for Amarillo College, not only to kind of take a person who has been, a bit removed from the educational system, taking some time to take care of your family, as you said, but to get them back in and like reestablish that love of learning. And then not only to kind of reignite that, but to meet you where you are, which I think is like the whole idea, that Amarillo College is looking to do, is to remove those barriers to let you, as a mother of a youngish child, do your schoolwork in pajamas, do your schoolwork with your child home. We know that childcare challenges are a huge barrier to non-traditional students. So just like top to bottom.
Oh yeah, it was the best thing. If there was not an online component, I would have never got to go back. And so the flexibility and even the price, it was just unbeatable.
That's great.
Would not ever suggest anything else but that.
That's awesome. Who were you working for? What work were you doing at that time?
So I worked for Santa Fe Federal Credit Union for about 10 years. Yeah, I did lots of things there. I started off in their marketing business development. Then I was a branch manager for a long time. And then I became the director of credit union experience. So basically, at the end of it all, I got to help train every single branch and every single person and create a whole robust program. So it was a great path to lead me where I am today.
Wonderful. So did you go straight from Santa Fe Credit Union over to Angels?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about Amarillo Angels. Full disclosure, I sat on the board for a handful of years. I love the work. I love the mission. Tell us a little bit about what the role of Amarillo Angels is in our community, because it's really a lovely one.
Yes. So I actually never heard of Amarillo Angels until working for Santa Fe Federal Credit Union. So I had one of our employees, he came to me and said, "Hey, we are going to have a little baby come into our home." And I was like, "Okay, what?" And he said, "My sister-in-law, she's having a baby. She can't keep it. It needs to go somewhere, and it's going to come with us." And I said, "Okay, what can we do?" And he was in a frantic mess trying to figure out what does he do next. And so, of course, we had a group of mamas, and we're like, "I have this, I have that, all the things." But the caseworker that they were working with said, "Hey, there's an organization called Amarillo Angels, and I want you to give them a call." So he calls them. And he comes back the next day, and I'm like, "What are you doing here? For one, you're supposed to be home freaking out about this baby. And then for two, what happened?" And he said that he reached out to Amarillo Angels, and he said what was going on. And so what they did was said, "What do you need?" And he said, "I need a crib." Amarillo Angels went, bought a crib, took it to his house, put it together to ensure that that baby had a place to be. And so after that, I was like, "Okay, we're about to search up Amarillo Angels and see what this is all about." Yes, and so we ended up doing a toy drive for them that Christmas, and we realized, wow, this is a best kept secret. If somebody outside of the foster care community doesn't really know what is going on, they don't really know the true meaning behind what Amarillo Angels does. And so what they do is they support children, youth, and families experiencing foster care. So that looks like a lot of different things, but basically that's wraparound support in the whole entire family. That is any single person under that roof, whether that be the primary caregivers, the siblings, anything kinship caregiver related, or the kiddos who are currently experiencing care. It just serves the whole entire family to let them know that they're not alone and we will get through it together.
And what are some of the services that you guys provide? It's one of the things that I think really drew me to Angels is that y'all have been able to remain so flexible to really just meet the need, like whatever that need may be. With your coworker, it was a crib. With others, that I came in contact with, it was like help cook in Thanksgiving. I've talked to love box groups, which we'll talk about, that it was like, let somebody come help me make 4 Valentine's card boxes. And I think that's something that I've really respected about Angels, is that y'all have been able to kind of stay a little bit free of some of the bureaucratic red tape to really just be able to support those families. What that has resulted in, though, also I think is kind of a relatively wide smattering of services. So kind of walk through some of the ways that you guys support families experiencing foster care in our community.
Yes. So again, whenever I first went into Amarillo Angels, and even in the interview, I was like, okay, what do you do?
Yeah.
Exactly. So what it boils down to is there's 2 programs, the Love Box program and the Dare to Dream program. And so when you think of a Love Box program, in my head, I would think of a physical box that you would take somewhere, but it's so much more than that. So what we do basically is we provide kind of like almost a matchmaking service in a way, and we find volunteers in our community and we match them with families or individuals and help them walk along their foster journey, because it is hard, it is tough, and we know that at least 50% of foster homes close within the first year, and a lot of that is due to a lack of support. So what we like to do is support them in any and every way we can. Like you mentioned, those Valentine's boxes or cooking dinner. But what we do is we see what needs each family has, and then we pair them up with a volunteer or group that can help meet those needs, because everybody has those special gifts and they like to pour into those gifts. And I know that I operate the best with my gifts. And so that's why we play matchmaker in a sense. So what we do is, say, for example, there's a family and it's a family of 4. One is currently experiencing foster care, but they're not the only ones. The whole entire family is. So if they need monetary support or emotional support or just somebody to say, I see you, that's what we do. Sometimes it looks like I need an air conditioner replaced because it is so hot and there are 8 kiddos in our home. We can meet those immediate needs, but also we're going to walk alongside you longer than that, because having all those kids in the home is a hard work. And so what can we do to help alleviate that? What can we do to build relational permanency? And so we just want to make it to where every kiddo knows that we know the color of their eyes and the passions of their heart. And we want them to know how special and important they are. And the same thing in our Dare to Dream program. So our Dare to Dream program is a one-on-one mentor program. And that is actually the program that I feel like if I knew that existed when I was growing up, that could have been a game changer to the rest of my trajectory of my life and my brothers as well. And so that is where we walk alongside youth ages 11 all the way up to 22, because when you are 18, you still need a lot of guidance. And so
perhaps more.
Oh yeah, because you have some freedom now because you're 18.
That's
and
right.
You have different rules. And just to say, I will do it with you. I'll do life with you. I'm going to teach you things. And that's what our volunteers do, is they teach them things like how to fill out a resume, how to make a budget, how to believe in yourself, and how to just exude confidence, even though you've dealt with all these things, how to overcome those barriers. And it's just amazing to see the transformation when somebody pours into somebody that just needs a little extra support.
So you mentioned, had you known about the Dare to Dream program when you were younger, with you and your brother, is like your familial setting or the way that you found yourself needing to be a caretaker of your brother, share as much as you'd like to about that, particularly how that now motivates you in your role at Amarillo Angels.
Yes. So whenever I was younger, my parents lived in the 70s. And whenever I grew up, they still lived in the 70s in their mindset. And so my dad was an alcoholic. My mom was a drug addict. And they just really never grew out of it. And so my parents ended up getting separated when I was probably about 11 or so. So my brother and I are 10 years apart. When he was born, he was the cutest little thing, and we did not expect him to come. So I have a younger sister who's 2 years younger than me, and so we were living our best lives, playing in the street till the middle of the night, and then this little tiny guy comes around, and he's crying in his little bassinet in the living room every night, and my mom is passed out on the couch. My dad is passed out somewhere else, and so probably around the time when he was about 4 months old, his bassinet started living in my room.
Wow.
And so I learned all the things. So whenever they got divorced, he moved away, my dad, to Albuquerque, and my mom stayed there. She would be gone for maybe a day, and then 2 days, and then eventually she stopped coming home.
Wow.
My sister ended up going and living with my dad. He got his act together, and so They were doing really good in Albuquerque, but we were still there in Amarillo, me and my little brother. So we'll fast forward a couple years, and I'm 15. My mom just never comes back. And so I made the decision to lie. I lied to everybody I possibly could. And so I would call his school because he was 5, so we started in elementary school. So I would call and say that my mom was sick, and I asked if I could go register him. And they would
Oh,
say
wow.
yes. And so she kept her ID there. And so I was able to have all the documentation and everything I needed. And I would go register him for school. And so I also lied when I was 15, said that I was 16, and I worked half-time, and I went to school half-time. So my very first job was at Long John Silver's, and so
Isn't
glad that it came back.
relevant?
Yeah, yes. And my neighbor would help take care of my brother until I got off of work, and then I'd go and pick him up, and then we do it all again the next day. It was really hard because I worked part-time at Long John Silver's. The cool thing is our house was paid for, but it was a mess of a house. It was all torn down. Half the time things didn't work. And because I made very little, there were times where I had to either pay for the gas or pay for the water or pay for the electricity. I couldn't pay for all of them all the time. And so there would be times when I would have a water hose from my neighbor's yard and we would use their water. And then I would boil it on the stove to get hot so he could take a bath. But we made
Sarena,
it work.
how did you know how to do any of this?
I know. I have always been a very resourceful person. I was always the one that if we went somewhere, I was always the designated driver, or I was always the one who just took care of everybody. I feel like that's a gift God just instilled in me of, you know what? I'm going to give you the tools to figure out a way to make it work. And my brother had no idea the struggle that we went through. And that's how I would have had it, not any other way. And so once I graduated, I bought my own graduation cake and my own ring because I still wanted it. And so I was like, I deserve this and I'm going to get it. And so I was very creative. I learned how to cut his hair. So I cut his hair. We didn't go to the doctor. We didn't go to the dentist. We didn't go to anything. I didn't know about any of that stuff. So the first time I went to the dentist is when I was 20 years old and had my own insurance. And surprisingly, I had no cavities, but it was just those things that people don't realize what they don't realize. And I feel like a lot of people knew what was going on, but no one did anything about it. My neighbors knew. There was no way they didn't know because they helped take care of my brother, but they just helped me. They helped me through it. If I needed food, sometimes they'd bring me food. We ate a lot of Long John Silver's. I will tell you that. And we just made it work. I was very fortunate. My dad had come home at one point in time and I had a savings saved up, and he blew my entire savings, but he did buy me a car out of it. It was a crappy car that if you push the brakes, the lights turned on, but it worked. And so I utilized that car to take my brother everywhere. And of course, my dad went back and did his thing. And even though he knew we were struggling, and around the age of 19, so I did that for about 4 years. Around 19, my dad moved back and they had a court date because he decided he wanted to fight for custody. So my brother could have at least one parent. And at this time I was
How did you feel about that?
I was ready to go to school and to do things, but I could do that with my brother. In my mindset, I was like, I can take care of him.
You have been, yeah.
Yeah, and so it was bittersweet. They did a court date, and
so he'd be 9, brother was 9.
At this time he was 9, And so him and my mom went to a court date, and I had to testify, and they asked me if I had to pick a parent, which one would it be? And so, of course, my dad was the better of the two choices at the time. And so, he ends up winning the custody case, and my brother didn't want to go with him. And rightfully so. I'm all he knew. And it was a whole journey and a whole thing. Eventually, he went back to live with my dad, and my sister was she graduated early, so she was 17, so she did non-traditional school and graduated early, and she ended up pregnant. And it was the best thing that ever happened because my niece is now a grown up and big, and it's just good to see. But there were all the statistics. We probably fit into every single one of those. And we just figured it out. And here we are, fast forwarding. I had always poured into everyone. And so my very first big girl job was at Amarillo Wesley Community Center. So I grew up
Love the
there.
West Lane.
Yes, I got to do all the things. So I worked there for almost 10 years. And that's where I found that I had a heart of service. And so anything I could do, I was like, okay, I'll do grant writing. I'll learn what that is. But my favorite thing was I did the youth modeling and mentoring program. So I was the director of that, and I got to build the curriculum and do all kinds of fun things. But that's when I truly realized it didn't matter what I did. I always just wanted to help people. And so my brother got to go to Wesley and play basketball and do all the things. And it was just really kind of full circle when it came back and I was able to walk on to Amarillo Angels. It was just an amazing thing.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, thank you very much for sharing that.
Of course.
Just to kind of put some things together, you know, what I'm thinking about is kind of the idea that like you're given the tools to match what is asked of you. It's astounding to me that at, 11 to 15, I have a hard time navigating registering my kids for school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's it's a whole jump roping thing. But I guess I wonder, you talked about your neighbors kind of maybe stepping in, but still
not doing.
Someone should have come in and swept you babies up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, even at school, no one had any idea at my school. I did have just some support systems, like my friends. They would be like, hey, come over. And, their parents, it's like their parents kind of knew, but didn't know the whole story. So they'll be like, y'all come over here, come eat, come hang out, and things like that. But it's like everybody knew and no one did anything about it. And
did the government ever get involved?
Nope.
Nobody ever got flagged?
No,
that this 14-year-old is raising a 4-year-old?
Never, never, never. Isn't that so crazy?
That's pretty wild.
And, looking back at it, I've never, ever had any resentment towards it. Like, I feel like that's what made me who I am. And I was never mad, never angry. I was always like, okay, what can I do now? I just felt like when I was helping, I was doing what I was supposed to do. It was so weird. So I didn't get to have the traditional childhood that everybody else had, but I was okay with that.
And if, of course, I respect it. I think what I would worry, though, is that you are the exception and not the rule.
That's exactly right. So most times that does not happen.
Right.
At all. And my success story was not just a success story. It was a bunch of trials and tribulations to get there. But most of these kids don't have that. Like, there's something that just pushed me towards, you have to do this. And a lot of times that's not the case. And so our job, especially with the Amarillo Angels, is to provide that support and say, you know what, I see you. You're not alone. And it is amazing.
I wonder your perspective. Our foster system, particularly in the state of Texas, is pretty rough.
Yeah.
It's not always, or not even most of the time, doing what is best for the majority of the kids that find themselves in that system. And so I'm thinking about your and your brother's story in ways where maybe the system didn't step in, didn't wrap its arms around you. And I think that's happening a good amount across our state. And obviously it's not much of a stretch to see what motivates you in the work of Amarillo Angels, but what is your perspective of our foster system, and what are the needs for these kiddos that you and your brother quite easily could have, and in many ways should have been a part of?
The one thing I can say is the rules and regulations and different things, there's nothing that Amarillo Angels can do about that. And so what we can do is provide that support where they are. And so the first thing is to meet them where their needs are. And sometimes that may look very ugly. And sometimes that may be being rejected by them tons of times, because in their life, maybe that's all they've ever experienced. But just to continue to be that consistent person, that's honestly what they truly need. Because for youth and teenagers, a lot of times there's no homes here in Amarillo.
That's
and
right.
So they have to be sent other places. Maybe they're even broken up from their siblings because their siblings are younger, and so they have a home here. But a lot of times they're not here in Amarillo. So not only are they taken away from maybe their siblings, but everything that they've ever known. And, just the things that we can do is just provide that constant support to that youth and to that family, because it's going to be hard and there's going to be struggles, but to not give up on them and to continue through it, because ultimately, even if we feel like man, I've tried to pour into this person time and time again, and it's not working. Maybe 10 years down the road, they're helping somebody else. And so every single thing that we do is with intention and just providing whatever it is that they need. I had this instance where I got to take one of our youth. She was actually 20. And so she was having her first real interview, and she called me and she was like, I have no idea what to do. I said, okay, let's start off. What are you going to wear? And she's like, well, I have some jeans. And I said, okay, let's figure this out. And so we have a really good rapport with a lot of other nonprofits. And we had this one particularly that said, you know what, if you ever have girls that need clothes for interviews, bring them over here. And so that's the very first thing that popped into my mind. And it's called Patsy's Place. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. But so I asked our youth, I said, hey, can I pick you up? Because she was in an instance where she came from another state and then she moved into Texas. So what we're also finding is that youth who do not grow up in the system in Texas may not be able to have all the services in Texas.
Great.
And so we're like, okay, there's another barrier. How are we going to climb it? And so we had to try to find non-traditional ways to do that. And so one of them was just partnering with different nonprofits. And so I picked her up. We went and we picked out some interview clothes. And they're like, you can pick 3 outfits and 2 shoes. She had no idea what to do because she never even got to pick her own clothes. She didn't know what size clothes she wore or anything. And it was the best thing. And so she asked me if I would help her. And I was like, okay, we're going to make you really cute so you can just have confidence. And
that's step one.
Yes,
step one.
Yes.
Just feel good about yourself.
It was so funny. She opened the door and she's like, is this weird? Can you come here? And I was like, yes, I can. And she had this outfit on and I was like, oh my gosh, you look so good. And she said, can you take a picture of me so I can send it to my boyfriend? And I was like, yes, absolutely. But just to see how she went to being like in this little shell to exuding confidence just in that small amount of time of somebody taking the time to say, I see you, was the best thing. And so we did all that, had a lot of fun. And on the way walking to the car, she's like, there's a lot of people that in my life didn't believe in me or said I wasn't going to amount to nothing. Mm-hmm. She had a very, very, very troubled childhood. And she's like, but people like you and other good people make me know that I can. I said, yes, you can. And you can do that for other people too. And she's like, yes, I can. And she didn't get the job. She ended up
we all know how that feels.
Yeah, she ended up not being able to do that. But she got the experience and she got the clothes. And she was on to her next defeated thing that she was going to tackle. And so it was just amazing to see just her change. And so there's times where we do stuff like that and it's just to say, I see you. And if there was somebody like that whenever I was younger, again, a lot of people need that. And a lot of people don't even realize that it's happening right under their nose.
Oh, man, absolutely. Many of our neighbors. Okay, so Sarena, I want to take you back to a statistic that you quoted earlier, and let's connect some dots because I think it really demonstrates how important the work of Amarillo Angels is. So you said earlier, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I remember this from whenever I was on the board, 50% of foster families close their doors after 1 year.
Yes.
And the number one reason that they give for closing their homes is lack of support.
That's absolutely right.
Okay, so let's take that, hold that, and then also know that statewide we are in a crisis for foster families.
Yes, absolutely.
And so Amarillo Angels specifically exists to support that family, that family that has taken the leap, answered the call, listened to their hearts for a plethora of reasons that they may feel called to be a foster family. Yes. And Amarillo Angels steps in to support them in whatever way that they need to be supported. Talk to me a little bit about the importance of supporting the whole family. And then also, I think that one thing that I experienced when I kind of started jumping in with Angels was I had some preconceived notions about the type of people that are foster families. I thought maybe that they were affluent, financially stable, wealthy, that, maybe it was comprised of couples who were experiencing infertility, that's a way to, to walk through the system, to result in adoption. I didn't, to be honest, I remember I didn't really understand why foster families needed support, just to be
Sure.
super frank. And I think that's one of the reasons that whenever I started unlearning those misconceptions, I personally started to understand the really important work of Amarillo Angels. So talk about like the reality of what foster families look like through your experience, because
Sure.
it's not just a pretty little couple that wants to bring a sweet baby home.
Yeah, it is definitely a lot different than that. And now, so I don't know if you're familiar with the term community-based care, but Amarillo has shifted its model of supporting foster families in general with community-based care. And so I'll talk about that a little bit here on, but basically supporting the whole family is so important because just say, for example, you have a kiddo, he's experiencing care, and he just got placed in that home. And then they have maybe a social worker or something. They're like, okay, we're going to take him and we're going to go spend some time with him for a little while. And so he goes and he comes back with an ice cream and a drink and things. But then the biological siblings start to create maybe some resentment of, why does he get to do that and I don't get to do that? And so then, some things start to boil and some things start to grow and fester. And not only that, okay, let's say this kiddo maybe had a lot of behaviors because of past experiences. And even if that family was set up and they're like, okay, this is what we want to do, this is our calling, but they don't realize the emotional toll that maybe this child has been through the whole time and how that affects the other kiddos in the home, them, their marriage. What we're also finding is that marriage counseling is a big need for those families who are experiencing foster care, because if you feel like you're pulled in 10 million different ways emotionally, then you're not filling everybody's cup the way that you should. And so
Your own included.
yeah, your own included, exactly. And so we found that supporting the whole family changes that mentality and says, I see all of you. Maybe mama just needs to take a bath while maybe we play with bubbles with the kids and we draw with chalk because she just needs some time to decompress. Or maybe mommy and daddy need to have date time.
That's
and
right.
so we can step in and say, you know what? We'll hang out with them for a couple hours so you can just go do you. And just providing that support. Like, again, you mentioned just Thanksgiving dinner. It's hard. So in foster families, especially with those kiddos, they have appointments all the time. So they have checkups, doctor's appointments. You have to write down every single thing that they eat, that they do, any behaviors that they have. You have to document everything. There's a lot of times where there was one in particular, this little kiddo, he had a very hard time regulating his emotions. So what he would do is he would stand in the corner and bang his head on the wall. And that is hard for a foster parent to document. It's a very hard thing. And so foster care just looks a lot different than what people think. And now there's this thing, which I had no idea it existed until my interview. I never knew the term kinship family. So what we're seeing right now is a whole lot more kinship families, because what's happening, switching to community-based care, is that they try to place the kiddo with somebody that's familiar with them, if that's in the best interest of the kiddo. So sometimes those families are not prepared. So maybe it's an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, third removed, or a friend down the street, but a safe place for the kiddo to be. And those instances aren't your traditional foster setting where they've decided that they were going to do this. They save the money. They have the space.
Prepared for it. Yes, for sure.
And so
they're like, here's...
Yeah, here you go. You have to have all these things or this kiddo cannot come, and you have to have it by yesterday.
Yep.
And so right now, that's what we're helping a lot with, is those kinship-based families, because they want to take care of that kiddo the best that they can, but they weren't financially set up, or maybe the space in their house wasn't big enough. And so sometimes if that happens, like say they have a family of already 5 kiddos, and then maybe they take in 3 from a cousin or an aunt. So now their home has 8 kiddos.
It's crazy.
And that's not right in foster care world. So that has to become a group home.
Right.
Where somebody has to stay up all hours of the night. But that's not feasible. And so they just can't get that support that they normally would in a traditional foster setting. And again, that's where we were like, okay, we can help. What do you need? Do you need a bed? Do you need a baby bath? What is it that we can do to alleviate some of that? And so again, that's just where it's been kind of shifting. And that's the support that we're finding has become an immediate need. And I think that's just all across the board, and Amarillo definitely is filling that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really love about kind of the approach of Angels is that you are pulling from our community to support our neighbors,
Yes.
which is like the most successful tactic, right? I know that like the love box groups that you talked about, those are oftentimes comprised of, Bible study groups and book clubs
Yes.
and, groups of coworkers, just girlfriends that get together. And instead of doing happy hour, they want to go do something a little bit more meaningful, right? And so they go and love on this family. What have you seen? So you've been executive director for what, gosh, has it been a year? Not quite.
No, so I actually started serving as the loan executive director just in March.
Oh, okay. Gosh,
Yeah.
time is weird.
Yeah.
What has surprised you stepping into the role and stepping into the organization? What did you maybe not expect to see as much of, or what has surprised you?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, the community support. It is amazing to see. Like, Amarillo is an awesome community, and they love to pour into their people. But the wraparound support that the community gives to our families is unmatched. I love hearing from the volunteers saying, hey, this is what happened. This is what I got out of it. And, we ask for a year-long commitment at a time. It's not like a one-and-done situation. It's a let's build life together. Let's walk alongside each other, because we want to eliminate those 50% closed homes, and we want them to see that we support them through the times. But what the best thing that I've really noticed is the year passes by and it continues. And it's no longer just a volunteer and a family. It's this relationship of friends and community together, and they continue their journey. And years later, it's really awesome to see. I've got to hear a lot of fruits of the labor that's happened, because they'll be invited to their kids' parties, or they get to do baby showers together, and they just become friends. And it's so amazing to see the transformation just in general, and getting invited to their kiddos' graduations, and, vice versa, and their friends becoming friends with each other's kids. It's just the best thing to see. But the community, that is definitely the biggest surprise. Working in a nonprofit before, I saw it, but it's really, really visible here in Amarillo Angels. If we say a family has this need, within 5 minutes, if you put it on social media, somebody has met that need, and that family can continue to go on about their business. And the really awesome thing is that they never forget it. We had this back to school bash where we provided supplies and things for kiddos that are in our program. We had a mom specifically come up, walk up to us and say, hey, you bought me a stove, and I just want to say thank you. And that was the best thing, to say, okay, we're going to keep doing what we're doing, because clearly it's making a difference every day.
This episode is sponsored by the Amarillo Art Institute at Arts in the Sunset. If you haven't been, this place is an amazing center for Amarillo's vibrant art scene. They have monthly events, including the First Friday Art Walk, which showcases the artists they have in residence, and they are some incredibly talented people with all sorts of wares and mediums. They also offer classes for children and adults in things like glass blowing, weaving, and pottery. It's super cool. Check them out on Facebook. That's Arts in the Sunset. All right, we're back with Sarena. This is the part of the show we call 8 Straight. I'm going to ask you 8 questions. You can answer them in as much or as little detail as you'd like.
Okay,
All right.
sounds good.
Okay, first one. When you think of Amarillo 10 years from now, what do you hope for?
I'm going to have to pull it back to Amarillo Angels, and I hope that every kiddo is seen, heard, and just loved on and supported on, no matter what that looks like.
Other than wind, what does this area have too much of?
Road construction, of course. And not only that, I think they have too much of a very small mindset. When I was like, oh, you just live in Amarillo. To me, I'm like, we get to live in Amarillo. It has so many amazing things. So sometimes I think as Amarillo as a whole, we need a little more self-confidence.
I really like that. I like that a lot. What do we not have enough of?
Not a lot of opportunities for teens and young adults. I find a lot of things for younger kiddos and places for them to go, but I've started to struggle a lot. I have an older son who's 15, and he can't find a lot of places to go. So I think we need more of that.
Okay, interesting. That's a helpful perspective. When was the last time you went to Paladuro Canyon?
Oh, honestly, it was pre-COVID. I know. And I love Paladuro Canyon, so I need to get back out there for sure.
Yeah, wonderful. What's your favorite local restaurant, Sarena?
I would have to say my favorite is called El Tejavan. So, I love that one every single time. And honestly, I love the food trucks. It's not restaurant related, but you can get any kind of food at a food truck. And I love our local food trucks.
Yeah, I really like, I just had a guest on recently that had a food truck. We were talking about like the rallies, because you can go and get like, every member of your family can like get a different type of food.
Yeah,
so it's really nice.
So we do food truck Fridays in our neighborhood.
Perfect.
It is fun.
How fun.
Yes.
How do you describe Amarillo to people outside the area?
So I'd say Amarillo is big enough to provide opportunity, but small enough to meet somebody you know in a grocery store.
I love that. What's the most underrated aspect of living here?
I really think it's the people. If anybody was to ever truly see the people, they'd never want to leave.
What's your favorite building in Amarillo?
I'd have to say my favorite building is Amarillo Wesley Community Center. It's been there for a very long time, and every time I go back, it just reminds me of all the fun and all the things, but they just serve so many people, and it's just an iconic place, and it's one of my favorite buildings.
Totally. Absolutely. All right. That concludes our 8 straight questions. Sarena, I like to wrap episodes up by asking you to endorse something. Anything at all that for each person that's listening, if they don't know about it, leave them with that knowledge. What you got?
So this is probably a weird one, but I would like to endorse volunteering for nonprofits. It may be Amarillo Angels or anywhere else, but if you're on the couch and you're scrolling and you're bored and you need something to do with your life, go and volunteer. I think I would 100% endorse that.
I completely agree. Sarena, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and thank you for your work.
Oh, thank you, Skylar, for having me.
I'm so excited about the upcoming Amarillo Symphony season. The Symphony's kicking things off with movie Music Under the Stars at Hodgetown on September 6th, followed by a Highland Fling with a live bagpiper and Tchaikovsky's famous piano concerto as their first concert in the Globe News Center. The season continues with the stunning power of Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique, the cosmic journey of Holst's The Planets, and Amarillo's beloved Happy Holiday Pops concerts. The Amarillo Symphony provides an exciting concert experience whether you're going for a date night or celebrating the holidays with your friends and family. With concerts running September to April, you don't have to miss a single note. Visit AmarilloSymphony.org for tickets and more. And that concludes the episode. Thanks to Sarena for the interview. For more information about Amarillo Angels and to support their work, visit AmarilloAngels.org or their Facebook page. Thanks to Amarillo Art Institute and the Amarillo Symphony for supporting this podcast, and to Angelina Marie for editing every week. If you're interested in supporting us, visit HeyAmarillo.com. Thanks for listening. This has been episode 411 of Hey Amarillo. I'm Skylar Gallup, and I hope we'll see you next week.